What's up, guys? So I made this video with the hopes that I could be as true as possible to what I think other people find important in an MMO, as well as what I find important in an MMO. And I wanted to preface this by saying that by no means should these be the only things that should be in the game. Just at the time of making this video, these are the 5 things that are most important to me personally, and I would also love to hear about what you guys have in terms of ideas as well. Like, what do you think is important? As always, guys, like the video if you liked it, and consider hitting that subscribe button. It would really help me out with pushing out more content. Anyways, let's get right into the video. So imagine the developer makes a game, right, with this incredible landscape and great visuals and amazing NPCs and dialogues, and really tries to get you invested in the story of the game, and then you find out that you can't really immerse yourself in it as your own character because of the poor character customization. I understand that for the most part, not everybody is super interested in an extensive character customization system because they just don't care. But for the most part, I do think that it cuts into the fantasy of being part of this world that so much time and effort has gone into. If you were just playing a stock character that the story is based solely around, like in the case of a single player RPG for example, that would be one thing, but when it comes to some MMOs, everyone in a way is kind of living their own story, right? So you want to be true to your own character. So in that way, we should have the opportunity to really build a character from the ground up and make it our own. Almost like we're writing our own story along with the path that was laid out for us by the developer. So it is my hope that we will really be able to dive in and immerse ourselves into the character creation system so we could really live out this character fantasy, just making the game that much better. And I feel like it'll definitely make more people want to invest time into their character because it feels more personal to them because, you know, it's something that they created, it's important to them. So a lot of people that play MMOs probably have been desensitized to questing because for the most part it's kind of laid out in front of you as kind of a way to just get to the end game and then the game actually begins after that. The reality is that a quest line should really set up the end game, as in it's part of the story of how we got to where we're going and set up why these like bosses or raids are doing what they're doing and how did we end up here, why are we here. I feel like a lot of games have done this well. Not necessarily in that context exactly, but they at least made it so the questing is an integral part of the game, and it's actually a time-consuming task that you can tell the story revolves around a lot more, like the whole game, not just the end game. So it'll be hard for them to get people to invest themselves in the quest lines if they're not interesting. So for example, the kill 10 boars type of quest, I do agree that those are fine, at least in the early stages of the game, but as we progress, you shouldn't really be doing those kinds of quests like in the final quest line, you know what I mean? Like right before you hit endgame, or max level rather, and you're still doing like collect 8 pelts, you know? A lot of the time it almost seems like they sort of want you to just get there toward the end and they don't really build it up as part of the story, but realistically I think it would do nothing but good for them if they were to make it so the whole entire early questing was just a setup for the end game as far as, you know, the story goes. Most of the time in the beginning stages of like some of the older MMOs, for example, it was about meeting people and, you know, getting help doing tasks like slaying the stronger monsters and getting groups together for dungeons. Even if you were trying to rush endgame, it still used to take a long time and required a lot of effort in most MMOs in the past. And I feel like the nostalgia factor of that idea that the game does take effort and is not just a rush to the end game, and it's about meeting people and making friends and really about the massively multiplayer part of the game. That's kind of all built into the fantasy of an MMO, in my opinion. So how many times have you started up an MMO and played through, you know, like a decent chunk of it just to find out that the class you chose is kind of non-existent when it comes to like PvE DPS or healing or PvP or, you know, something like that? Well, that's kind of the thing that I hope that Intrepid avoids when they put the classes together, and is really able to find an identity for each of them. Like, to expand on that, I guess one of the most important parts of the game is for each class to have its own identity, right? So in the class system that they presented, there's a lot of different combinations, and I think it'll be a challenge for them to balance everything the best way that they possibly could. And of course I understand that it's not really possible to make it so every single class is competitive at the same time because of the way that, you know, they balance it around PvP most of the time and things like that. But my hope is at least that something is interesting about every single class, you know, so you can have more of a niche pick than somebody else. Like that, I feel like that kind of game style should be encouraged. Like I would hate to be maybe 5 classes at the top, and then if you're playing anything else, you just don't get invited to groups or guilds, or you're not able to take part in certain encounters or something else like that. No matter what, the important thing is that every class should feel unique and fun in its own way, and it should fill the role that it feels like it should fill based on the abilities and spells that you choose and the class fantasy that you're going for and things like that. At the same time, it shouldn't feel like you're playing a class that's too similar to another one, just like a weaker version or a way stronger version. I think that will keep it relatively competitive in the long run. One thing that I will say that ruins an experience for me is when I'm questing in an area and I try to tag a mob, right? But it's already tagged. Okay, so maybe this is just the kind of, high volume area for mobs because there's a quest nearby or something like that. So I go and try and tag another mob, and that one also gets tagged first by the same person who is still fighting the other mob. And then I'm like, wait a minute, I don't think this is an actual player. So I try to message the person and say, hey, do you want a group? Maybe we can take this monster together and get the quest done. And you guys have seen it before, you can tell a bot when you see one, especially when they don't respond and they have these really robotic movements that their characters do, and it just looks really obvious. To be honest, that is one of the things that really ruins the game for me, when basically it's that easy to just kind of go off and cheat, and it's, there's very little consequence. I feel like games that I've played in the past have managed this pretty well with like really good support systems and report systems and whatever automated system that they have in place that detects bots. I think they can optimize it pretty well. But then there's the other end of the spectrum where you log in and it's literally just all bots everywhere, and it completely ruins the economy of the game. A player-driven economy is extremely important in a game, especially like this, where we're kind of controlling how the world goes and grows, like with the node system and things like that. So I know that there probably will be bots in some capacity, but I hope that there's not enough that it could seriously impact the economy to where nothing is really worth anything because they just farm all day long, and there's not enough player-driven economy factors anymore. It's probably one of the top things that ruins a potentially good MMO for me. So this is probably the most polarizing topic that I'm going to bring up in this video, but it's also, in my opinion, at least like top 3 most important in an MMO of this type, just like for me. So when you think of endgame, there's a limitless amount of things that you could be referring to, like raiding or PvP, world PvP, which obviously is not just for endgame, but you know what I mean. And a big gripe that I see is that you spend all this time, working on your progression and, perfecting your class and, basically doing the best you can to beat these bosses, and it turns out that either like there's not a whole lot of loot that drops as far as like good loot, or there'll be like 20 people and maybe 1 or 2 people get loot or something like that, and then another person gets like the same item they got last week from that boss, you know what I mean, something like that, which it really like stalls progression for a lot of people, and it's really discouraging when you spend all this time doing that and you don't really get anything out of it. And then there's like the other parts of it where they like just don't make it challenging enough. So a good implementation is like a tier system. So like, I guess in case of like World of Warcraft, for example, they have normal and then heroic and then mythic. I actually think like on paper that's a really good system because not everybody is even into raiding in the first place, but the people that are usually like doing heroic at least are a little bit more dedicated to the process than someone who's doing like a looking for raid type feature, right? So in reality, there should be a system in place where those who really want to push themselves should be able to do that in a raid. And the same thing goes for PvP. Like, if there's not a really extensive raiding system of some kind in their PvP, then it's going to be hard for people to be like motivated to do it because of the fact that they're not going to really have anything to show for it other than maybe like control of an area in the instance of a node system. And I just think it's important, especially in a game like Ashes of Creation. I think it could go a long way if they listen to what the players have to say as far as how they want this to play out, and then eventually as more people enter the end game, we'll have a better understanding of what people actually want, what features they like about the end game, what features they don't like about the end game. So hopefully they have some kind of system in place where maybe we could vote on stuff or something like that. I think that would really work out in a case like this. So I understand that not everybody is going to agree with me in all these things, whether they just don't care about them or they don't find them to be that important. But like I said, this is just what I feel is important in an MMO that I want to play, right? So I want to hear from you guys as well. Like, what are some of the things that are important to you as far as features go? Maybe it's a new feature that hasn't even been implemented into another MMO yet, or maybe it's something that's rather common, but your favorite MMO right now doesn't have it, or something like that. What is it you're looking for in Ashes of Creation? Like, what do you want to get out of this? Anyways, that's all I have for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. As always, I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.